counting down the days till National Signing Day and also looking to the future. That's right, we can multitask here on this show. The biggest signee on February 1st, Duce Robinson, joining the program. And then in the 2024 class, five-star quarterback Jaden Davis has a new visit on the books. The latest with him, a Cormani McClain update, and a preview of next week's five-star rankings update. All that and more as the College Football Recruiting Show starts right now. Our Director of Scouting, Andrew Ivins, is back with us today. I'm Emily Proud, and be sure to send your questions in the chat. We'll answer some of them at the end of the show. But this is the beginning, so let's hit the headlines as we always do. We'll be in the number 2 quarterback in the 2024 class. Also comes with a very busy schedule. For Jaden Davis, his spring will be filled with workouts and visits. He's currently off to North Carolina this weekend, but Andrew, they're one of just many interested parties. What makes him such a hot commodity?
Well, he's got the tools to win games on Saturdays. Jaden's a kid we loved as a freshman, took a little bit of a step back as a sophomore, rebounded in a big way as a junior, led his team to a state title, Gatorade North Carolina Player of the Year. More impressively, 73% completion percentage. We think he can win again at the highest level.
All right. Meanwhile, the number 1 quarterback in the class is also being heavily courted. Apparently, Matt Rule is making quite the impression on Dylan Raiola. Andrew, what do you think of this potential marriage?
I love it. Look, Matt Rule is going to get speed to Lincoln. He's going to get some receivers. He just signed a freak and Malachi Coleman. Dylan Raiola is the type of quarterback that can air it out. I think he would unlock some things for Big Red, who finished last season with the 82nd best passing offense in all of college football. So I'm all for Raiola to Nebraska.
Oh, yeah, they would like him sooner than 2024 for sure. T-minus 12 days until National Signing Day, and the number 1 tight end, Duce Robinson, told our own Blair Angulo that his decision will come on the big day, February 1st. He's also a coveted MLB prospect, so we know he's an athlete, but what about his game makes him such a dynamic weapon on the football field?
He's a mismatch. We saw him in Orlando at the Under Armour All-America game. He was shaking defensive backs, linebackers. Whoever is getting him is getting a true red zone threat and someone that can bail out quarterbacks on 3rd, 4th down whenever that's needed.
All right, Robinson will be on the show a little bit later, so you won't want to miss our discussion with him. In other news, though, per our national recruiting analyst, Brandon Huffman, 2023 5-star quarterback Jaden Rashada officially requested a release from his NLI with Florida. Andrew, how do you evaluate this Gator class without Rashada?
It's a blow, but I still love the group that Billy Napier and his staff assembled. They knew they needed to get better up front on the defensive line. They did that. Cam James, Kelby Collins, Will Norman, they can all get after the quarterback. And then on offense, they got some wide receiver help. Eugene Wilson, Aiden Mizell, Andy Jean, those are all potential game breakers on the outside. So still a lot to like about the group headed to Gainesville.
Yeah, a little positivity there, Gator fans. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the first few episodes of the 24/7 Sports Football Recruiting Podcast hosted by Andrew and our next guest, Cooper Petagna. Thank you so much for being here. If you have not checked it out yet, consider this segment here just a little bit of a taste. But guys, we got some business to take care of today. You're both working really hard on next week's rankings update. I know so many people would love to be a fly on the wall during those discussions. Count me as top of that list. Here's kind of your opportunity. So let's start with the running back position. Ruben Owens currently in that top spot, but a few other names pushing for it right now. Cooper, what have those discussions been like?
Well, they've been hot and heavy. I mean, Andrew and I, Gabe Brooks, another national recruiting analyst, along with Chris Singletary. And this is a room that we're still trying to figure out. What makes it very difficult is it's a depreciating room. And we talked about guys like Bijan Robinson, who are one of the most accomplished backs in the country. And you look at his value right now and his stock in the upcoming NFL draft. This is a guy who is a mid to late first round projected draft pick. So when you take that into consideration, it kind of muddies the water a little bit. And I think we feel very strongly about Ruben Owens, the number 1 running back in the country. He's on his way to College Station to play for Jimbo Fisher, and he checks every box: height, weight, speed. This is a guy that came in under 10.8 in the 100 meters multiple times. A lot of production in the state of Texas as well. So there's not a lot of holes in his game. And with Cedric Baxter, another big physical back out of the state of Florida, he's going to go play at the University of Texas and link up with Arch Manning and Steve Sarkisian. He's 6'1", 215 pounds, very physical downhill runner. So this is the case of we like two players very highly in our board, but for us, it's about the position value and where these guys project to Sundays. And that right now has kind of been the hang up. And there's another guy outside of the top 32 who's making a case. That is Alabama running back signee Justice Haynes as well. He had a really good week in San Antonio.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Haynes. I think his game translates to the next level, the NFL, his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. I want to circle back on Cedric Baxter. You mentioned he's 215 pounds, and we've said it. We still think he has a ton of growth potential. He doesn't look like someone that's spent much time in a squat rack. He's going to be able to add some size. Already has been a workhorse on Friday nights, ran for over 3,000 yards the past 2 seasons. And we question the speed all the time with him. And then you look back at the data, go back to 2 years ago. He was at the same camp as 250 other kids. He had the 4th fastest 40-yard dash time. The kid who had number 1, he just ran in the Olympics, Irion Knighton. So a lot to like about Cedric Baxter. And this is going to be an interesting one. How many do we have inside the 32, and who is number 1?
So you're not going to tell us? We got to wait. We got to wait till next week. Okay, that's fine. That builds the intrigue a little bit here. Let's go to the linebacker position. That's kind of an interesting one. There's only one 5-star right now. That's Anthony Hill. I went back and looked. That actually has not happened in the last decade. The last 9 cycles have all had at least 3 linebackers rated as 5 stars. Cooper, I asked you ahead of time. You told me you do expect that number to change. Why?
Absolutely. Well, there's guys like Raylan Wilson, guys like Suntarine Perkins. They're going to be really difficult to keep out because they're different. They have a one-of-one skill set. When you talk about Raylan Wilson from the state of Florida, this is a guy that touched 23 miles per hour plus on Catapult's GPS. If you don't know what that is, that tracks and quantifies play speed. So Raylan Wilson, a guy that can absolutely fly around the football field. And we talk about Sunday traits. This is a guy who's built for speed and space. He's going to go play his football at Athens, at the University of Georgia under Kirby Smart. I don't think there's a better fit in the country at the linebacker position than Raylan Wilson to Georgia. Another guy that is the absolute wild card in this top 32 is Suntarine Perkins from the state of Mississippi. We didn't really get to see him up close and personal until a couple weeks ago at the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game where he really shined. And this is a guy that can do so many different things. Very comfortable out covering the slot man-to-man, whether that's matching up with a running back or a tight end. Very physical between the tackles as well. He's 6'3", he's 200 pounds. He's got really long arms. One of the traitsiest players that you'll see in this class, regardless of position. And how about this for a stat line? His state championship game, 32 carries, over 330 yards. He had 4 touchdowns, 6 tackles, 1 INT, and 4 two-point conversions. I've never seen anything like that. So this guy is freaky in a good way. We love Suntarine Perkins.
Yeah, I've watched Suntarine's state title game, I think, like 3 times already. I call it scouting porn. I mean, this guy is outside the hashes at cornerback, comes up in the gap and drills people, rolls his hips through him. We love him. And I think with these 3 linebackers, it just kind of comes down to what kind of flavor are you looking for? And going back to Raylan Wilson, who is headed to Georgia, he actually went through some college football playoff practices with the Bulldogs. They had him on the scout team, and from what I heard, he looked awesome. He laid a big hit on one of those senior veterans there. He wouldn't tell me who because he didn't want to have some bulletin board material for this spring. But this is a great bunch. They're all new age linebackers. They can all run, and all 3 of these guys can also play against the run and defend those A and B gaps. So a very, very talented group and guys that we expect to play on Sundays one day.
All right, you guys are the diehards. You love watching the linebacker film, but us layman people over here love watching quarterbacks play. That's obviously the very exciting thing to see. We've already seen a little bit of shuffling between number 2 and number 3. The last rankings reveal Nico getting the nod at 2, Dante Moore at 3, Arch Manning, of course, seems pretty solidly number 1, unless you guys are about to tell me otherwise. But how competitive is the race for QB 4 right now, Cooper?
Very competitive, and we went back and forth, and one of the guys whose name was always at the top, really from start to finish, was Malachi Nelson out of Los Alamitos in California, and this is a guy who has a really clean resume. But for us, the challenger in this situation, in this conversation, is Jackson Arnold out of Denton Guyer, the Oklahoma signee, who is a beautiful fit in Jeff Lebby's offense in Norman, Oklahoma. And this guy is just a winner, 28-3 over the last 2 seasons. He's completed 67% of his passes, and I love what he does through the air. He has an excellent command and feel of the game. Timing, anticipation, accuracy, they're all on display. Whatever it is, he has it. And I think his ability as a runner, his ability to extend plays, keep his eyes downfield, and create explosive plays in the passing game and on the ground as well. He's got 38 touchdowns throughout his career at Denton Guyer on the ground. So he can get it done in multiple ways. I love Jackson Arnold. That's probably the guy that you want to circle right now if you're looking for that QB4.
Cooper has been the champion of Jackson's rise throughout this whole process. And I'll admit, I was kind of on the other side, and then I saw him at the Under Armour All-America game, and I've been going to that event for 8 years now. I don't think there's been a quarterback that looked as sharp as him in practice in a long time. He was excellent over the course of those 3 sessions, led the game in passing yards and rushing yards. We talked about that ability to run the football. He's creative. He's a gamer. And the thing that stood out to me, just how people listened to him in the huddle, and he had a commanding presence. So I think he's going to go to Oklahoma. I think he's going to push for playing time. We'll see what happens. I still really, really like Malachi Nelson. You saw those clips earlier of him evading pressure. I think his ability to keep his eyes downfield and hit his targets is some of the best in the 2023 cycle. So certainly an interesting debate for QB4 on our board.
Yeah, you guys are being so nice and it's not getting contentious. I like to imagine these as very heated discussions, but when it does come to the quarterback position in particular, Andrew, how lively are those debates considering all the other factors that go into it? You talk about the intangibles, owning the huddle, so many different systems these guys play, and how heated are those debates when you're trying to rank these guys?
I mean, there's times that I send Cooper some text messages and I feel like, we just need a few minutes or a few hours to kind of steam, cool down a little bit. No, it's fun. Quarterback's the most important position, and everyone's going to have different opinions. We're just trying to all get on the same page and find a consensus.
Cooper, I'll let you chime in as well. We're keeping it kind here?
Yeah, we're keeping it cool. I got to be honest. There's a couple times throughout the week where same thing. Andrew, just like I'm going to leave the phone in the other room. I don't want to talk to him. I spend way too much time with this dude. So you know what? What's one more segment we got to do?
Yeah, okay. We only have one more question here, so I feel bad like just lighting a match and walking away. But let's finish here. The final rankings update for 23 was the 5 stars. They're officially going to be locked in during Thursday's show. So that's it. This is the last one. Just give me just a little something here, a little sneak peek. Who are a few prospects maybe outside the top 32 right now, Coop, who could make that jump to the coveted 5-star status?
Well, I'll give you 3, and if you're an Oklahoma fan, you got to be pretty excited about what you've heard on this show. First with Jackson Arnold, and the next guy is PJ Adebawore out of the state of Missouri. And this is a guy that we always knew he was a little bit different, had unique traits as a pass rusher off the edge. The biggest thing for us was we had to see him live, and Andrew got to do that in Orlando. See, I do listen to Andrew, and this was a guy that's going to continue to move up our board. What he has, you just can't teach, and I think he's going to a perfect situation in Oklahoma under Brent Venables and his tutelage. I think this is going to be a guy a couple years from now. A lot of front offices in the NFL are going to be dying to get their hands on. A couple other guys, Jordan Hall on the defensive line for the University of Georgia. The biggest question we had about Jordan Hall coming into San Antonio at the All-American Bowl was, what's this guy going to weigh in at? He came in 6'3", 317 pounds, 35.5-inch arms. So he answered any questions there about his size, but then he dominated all week. And then you think about what Georgia has done defensively on the line of scrimmage. You think about guys like Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, those guys inside that have had a ton of success. Jordan Hall looks like he's going to be the next up there. And then, outside of that, I would say Yanze Pierre out of the state of Alabama. This is a guy that we had currently as a top 100 player, just inside the top 100, tucked in the early 90s. And he came to San Antonio, and I expected him to impress, but what he did, he turned heads every single day. And this is a guy, first step explosive, really reactionary athlete, is really easy and a smooth mover around the edge. And this is a guy that just knows how to get to the quarterback. And then you look at him, he's got a long way to go in terms of his physical maturation. So you look at all 3 of those guys, a couple pass rushers and interior presence as well. These are all premium positions. That's always something that is valued in the NFL draft, and in turn, something we value as well.
Yanze, I call him a madman. You know, that shot he had on Dante Moore in the All-American Bowl. I've never seen anything like it in one of those games. PJ Adebore, I call him PB&J because remember, I tell this story all the time, but he told me back in the summer months to add weight. He was eating 6 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches a day to get the calories. His brother's probably going to be selected, it sounds like, round one, round two, possibly. So PJ's even more athletic than him, and it's just crazy that there's another one up. So a lot to like about all three of those guys. Jordan Hall, love his personality. Talked to the staff at Georgia. This is a guy that worked out multiple times for them, not once, not twice. I think it was 3 times there in June. You just don't hear that these days in 2023.
I seem to really like him. Cooper, we really like you. One more thing though, check over your left shoulder. There's like something watching you a little bit. It's a little creepy there, but we do
That's
appreciate
me right there.
It's
That's
you.
my guy.
It's an interesting version of you, but thank you so much for joining the show here. Hey, you get more of that 3 days a week on the 24/7 Sports Football Recruiting Podcast. Join Andrew and Cooper every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm trying my best right now to not be too jealous of Blair, who's, probably living his best life in Honolulu right now. But he's not on vacation. He is there for the Polynesian Bowl. He's hanging with some of the top prospects, including the aforementioned Duce Robinson. And before he made the trip to the Aloha State, he actually worked out with the LA Dodgers. So you have to add the Major League Baseball teams interested to the list of potential destinations. But as for college teams, here he is discussing his top 4.
I think I'm able to create mismatches. I think I'm able to make plays that not a lot of people are able to make or create plays. So I think that's probably why they're still recruiting me. And so, I'm not necessarily, I couldn't tell you exactly how they're going to use me, but hopefully as a playmaker. Coach Sark and Coach Banks from Texas came in. They're fantastic storytellers. They're both super funny. We just had a really fun time being able to talk with them, spend a lot of time with them. Coach Maringer with Oregon. He's just a guy that you love to be around. He's a father figure alongside a great coach, and spending time with him has been incredible. Coach Riley's offense is explosive. That's pretty obvious. And so, they find ways to get their playmakers downfield, get the ball in their hands and let them eat. Caleb, he's the best quarterback in college football. There's no doubt about that. Some of the stuff he's able to do is nothing short of incredible. So being able to catch balls for him would be a lot of fun.
For Duce, so it's Georgia, USC, Oregon, and Texas all being considered. Of those 4, Andrew, which in your mind would be the best fit for the top tight end in this class?
How about Georgia, right? Todd Hartley, he's quickly turned into kind of the GOAT when it comes to recruiting and developing tight ends. He had 3 drafted at Miami, had 2 drafted so far at Georgia. He's going to have another one go this upcoming May in Darnell, Washington. I think if he goes to Georgia, they're going to find ways to use him. They've turned that tight end room into a room of weapons, and it doesn't matter how many of them they have. They're going to find ways to get him on the field. Now, I think the school that probably needs Duce Robinson the most, it's probably Texas. They're going to lose Jatavian Sanders after the upcoming season, likely to the NFL draft. We'll see what he announces a year from now. But they need to find kind of a difference maker and a game breaker. And Duce Robinson is that at that tight end position. You could put him in line. You can put him out in the slot. He still has a ways to go. The upside is there. So I think Texas, if they were able to get Duce Robinson, that's going to keep Arch Manning happy. It's going to keep Quinn Ewers happy. And it's just going to allow them to continue to score points and move the ball down the field.
Yeah, you're right. Georgia doesn't need him. Come on. They already have an embarrassment of riches at that position. But I do see from a perspective standpoint, taking a look at the guys that have come before him and seeing that they have had success. Well, we also told you earlier that he will make his college decision on signing day, February 1st. And Robinson gave us some factors that he's taking into consideration before putting pen to paper.
The biggest thing is just continuing to build that relationship because it's just going to come down to the place where I feel most comfortable. Where I feel like I could be the best developed and have the best relationships. So those are the biggest factors right now. It's just figuring out the place, and I think all those schools. I think we've kind of narrowed it down to those schools because we felt like those were the ones that would provide the best opportunity for me. But now it's just trying to figure out among those schools which one would probably be the best fit.
Okay, so he mentions relationships, development, fit, all factors that we hear quite a bit, but I want to go back to the dual sport dynamic. We have seen a few instances of athletes playing two sports in college, but at one point, though, there's always that big decision that needs to be made. Because, Andrew, I mean, just how difficult is it to do both at such a high level?
It's an elite fraternity of athletes that have done it. Russell Wilson, you have Marquise Goodwin, the Olympic sprinter. CBS's sports own Danny Cannell. He played some baseball when he was at Florida State. It's going to come down to the coaching staffs at both sports being on the same page. I mean, Duce is going to be dragged in a variety of different directions. And we saw it with Kyler Murray when he was at Oklahoma. You know, he played in the spring game, and then I believe that night he was out in the outfield for the Sooners baseball team. So Duce is certainly talented enough to do it. It's just going to come down to everyone in that athletic department being on the same page. They might need a little golf cart to drive them from one facility to the other, but you can do it. It's been done before. It's hard. And the guys that do it normally pan out and have a ton of success in one of those sports.
Yeah, I have to imagine whatever school he ends up at, to get this kind of talent, they'll do whatever needs to be done. Hey, once again, one of the schools mentioned in the final group is Texas, and that's where we go next on this show. So let's say hello to Mike Roach of Horns 24/7. Mike, where does Texas currently fit into the mix for Duce Robinson?
Well, they're certainly in the group. I mean, they've kind of been in the group since they landed Arch Manning back in the summer. I think that was a big part of it. It feels like they're anywhere from near the top to the middle. I know Georgia seems to have a lot of the buzz right now and a lot of the momentum, and how could they not with what they've done at the tight end position? USC's been a long-time favorite, but I think Texas has shown him a couple of things, and obviously the opportunity is there for him to come in and play immediately.
Mike, the reason we brought you on here, though, is to talk about the big recruiting weekend coming up for Sark and company, and still kind of waiting for the Longhorns to take that next step on the field, entering year 3 with this staff. So just how important is it for them to have success next season to maintain what's been a great and a high level of recruiting?
Over the last decade at Texas, that's really been the problem, is anytime a staff has seemed to gain some momentum or started to move in the right direction, they've taken steps back. I think that they have to take another step forward in the next year. And, you know, there's a lot of factors that go into recruiting. We talk about relationships. We talk about NIL, all those sorts of things. Nothing recruits like a winner. And as Mac Brown showed when he was in Austin, nothing recruits at Texas like a winner. So I think they've got to take a definite step forward and start really showing that they're making some progress toward being an elite program again.
Mike, I love the book over your shoulder. You gave me one. I got mine on my bookshelf as well. But Arch Manning was the crown jewel of the 2023 cycle for the Longhorns. That's a guy they targeted from the jump, got him in the boat. As they turn the page to 2024, who are some recruits that they've circled that could be possible bell cows? I have a hunch Jarrett Gibson, the 5-star running back, might be one of them. Anyone else we should know about?
Jarrett Gibson definitely is one. There's a lot of confidence there. That the staff is in a good position with him. We do have him on our list and expect him to be in Austin this weekend for Junior Day. And that's a guy that I think a couple of years ago, I don't know that you would believe Texas could win that recruitment. But Tashard Choice went out, got Cedric Baxter this year in a big national recruitment, and is set to do the same again with Jarrett Gibson. And there's a lot of confidence there. I think when you look at the in-state guys, there's some really talented ones in the state of Texas, including Kobe Black from the Waco area, who's our #1 player in the state, and then Micah Hudson, who's from the Lake Belton area. Both of those, hour and a half from the Texas campus, those are guys I think they would circle as their bell cows in state.
All right, we got 2 types of recruiting nowadays. That's high school recruiting and portal recruiting. So in the portal, you got Georgia wide receiver A.D. Mitchell entering on the last day to do so, which was yesterday. You got some early interest from Texas, so where do they stand with him as they look to add to that wide receiver room?
This was a name we were told even before the portal opened in December that if he were to go in, that there was a good chance he'd be looking at Texas. He played his high school ball in Texas before moving to Tennessee, and I believe still has family in the Houston area. And so it was a name we were alerted to, and then once he never went in, it was kind of something we forgot, pushed to the back of our minds. But in the last week or two, the noise started building that he would go in. I think Texas is the front runner in this race. And it wouldn't surprise me to see something move very quickly there.
Mike, another big out-of-state visitor for the junior day, King Joseph Edwards, by the way, on the all-name team already for the 2024 cycle. He's going to be in town. A lot of people think Georgia is the team to beat there, but from what I've heard, it seems like the dogs are fading a little bit. So do you think Texas has a chance to make a move over the weekend?
Yeah, that's another one where I think Tashard Choice will play a big role. From his time at Georgia Tech, he seems to have a pretty good relationship with coaches in the state of Georgia and has done a lot of good work recruiting out that way and getting Texas into the mix with some of those players. I think that King Joseph Edwards obviously is going to have a whole host of teams to choose from, but I'm really interested to see what the feedback is coming off of this weekend and if Texas can make a move.
All right, a top 5 class in 2022, a top 3 class in 2023. So where do you see the Longhorns' potential on the trail in 24?
I think a lot does depend on what their results are in the season, but this is an elite recruiting staff Steve Sarkisian put together since the moment he arrived in Austin. It's a priority for them. They seem to do everything from a staff perspective with an eye toward recruiting, and they try to keep innovating and keep pushing. And so I think that they've proven that they can recruit at the highest levels. And I think at this point, anything less than a top 10 class is a disappointment.
All right, Mike, we asked the tough questions here on the show, so I got to close with this. How concerned are you that Arch Manning has lost 2 IDs in 1 week? Should we be concerned?
It's an easy joke I've seen, but it's I think we have to question the pocket awareness of Arch Manning. I mean, that's college life, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you how many student IDs I lost while I was in college, too. So we'll give him the benefit of the doubt, but man, he just arrived there. Mike, thank you so much for all the great intel. Keep it locked into Horns 24/7 for all things Texas. Hey, let's head to the 305 where it's always a party in Miami. But when it comes to recruiting, this weekend, it's the place to be. There's the Battle 7-on-7 Miami, and it just so happens that the event coincides with one of the biggest 2024 recruiting weekends for the Canes. So, of course, we need some help, and here he is. Let's welcome in Gabby Arrudia from Inside the U. Gabby, if all goes well, how big an impact can this weekend make for Miami's 24 class? Oh, I think we're having some trouble getting Gabby here. So in the meantime, Andrew, let's just take a look at the beautiful scenics here from Miami. Andrew, it just so happens that you are going to Miami this weekend. So while we wait to get Gabby's audio, tell me, what are you looking forward to seeing this weekend?
This is kind of the appetizer for the 2024 cycle, Battle Miami. It's been, I think this is year 4. This is year 4. If you go back to the past few kind of lists, our top performers, I mean, there are some big time names on there. Eli Holstein, the quarterback that signed with Alabama, he threw down here a few years ago. Shaz Preston was one of his top targets. Last year, I got my first look at Nico Iamaleava. He was out there. Dante Moore was out there. Cormani McClain was out there. So it's kind of a who's who, and everyone cares about 7-on-7 right now. It's a great opportunity to kind of body type, see guys with the eye test, and then just see how they can compete. You're going to get elite defensive backs going up against elite wide receivers. Sometimes it's pretty rare to see that. And for me, it's kind of really about those arms. One guy I'm really excited to see, Julian Sayin, the Alabama commit. He's going to be playing for Team Raw, a new organization. And then you got Bryce Underwood, who's our number 1 ranked quarterback in 2025. So loaded list. I'll be there. Gabby's going to be there. I know Steve Wilfong, he's currently somewhere over the United States flying down. We'll have full coverage.
And look who's back. Gabby, let's try this one more time. We just talked about it. It's going to be a huge weekend down in Miami. How big could this be for momentum into the 2024 class for the Canes?
Yeah, Emily, I think it could be really big. I mean, looking back to this time last year, this was the event where Miami first got Francis Mauigoa on campus. The first time Jaden Wayne was on campus, meeting with Mario Cristobal, Riley Williams, Malik Bryant, a couple different guys who ended up signing with the Hurricanes. So I think that this can be a sort of foundational weekend for the Hurricanes, just kind of moving forward, transitioning from 2023 to 2024. I mean, Andrew was just talking about all the different guys that are going to be down there. I mean, the expectation is that a lot of those guys, if not all of them, will eventually roll through Coral Gables, sometime Saturday or maybe even Sunday after they're done playing or before they're playing. So it's a very unique opportunity for Miami to just host a ton of talent. I mean, I'm just looking over, glossing my list, and I have 42 members of the top 247 in the class of 2024 who could potentially be, down here in South Florida this week. And that's that I don't have my hands on each and every roster of guys here. So it's going to be really, really big. And, I know that staff is really looking forward to, hosting all those dudes, getting them on campus and showing them what the University of Miami has to offer.
Yeah, it sounds like it's about to be the who's who, not just of the reporters that we have going down there, but the players that you're getting ready to see. Andrew, I'm curious from your perspective, we've seen these All-American games and bowls and everything, but what do you get out of a 7-on-7 tournament like this one?
Oh, I just touched on it a little bit before. I mean, you get to see these guys. Sometimes we have measurements on them. Everyone thinks they're 6'5". They're really 6'3". You're just trying to see these guys move around. Like I said, for me, this will probably be all about the quarterbacks. I mentioned Julian Sayin, Bryce Underwood, but also the defensive backs. Ellis Robinson, Charles Lester, KJ Bolden, all those guys are going to be here, and they're going to be going up against elite wide receivers. I mean, when we pour through tape, sometimes those guys don't have a football come their way at all. But in the 7-on-7 setting, there's a ton of passing. You can't run the football. Well, I think you can run once every game, but that's normally like a little sneak. So it's great for us. And what I love is just interacting with the kids, seeing their mindset, mentality. Steve Wilfong's going to have all the scoop on who's going where, who's feeling this. But again, it's kind of chapter 1 for us in the class of 2024. Signing day 2 weeks away, and then it's all about the juniors.
Yeah, you'll have that notepad out there. Do you have a timer, too, that you're timing them, some measurements, something like that?
I'm interested to see how many steps I take over the course of 10 to 9. So how many miles I walk, we'll see.
Okay, we'll do a segment on next week's show about all your Apple Watch stats. Hey, it would not be a Miami recruiting segment without a Cormani McClain reference. He did just get back from Colorado. The Crystal Balls do favor Dion after that visit. Gabby, where does Miami sit with their, it's crazy to say, but still verbally committed 5-star corner?
Yeah, he is. He's still verbally committed to Miami. This has been just an absolute whirlwind of a recruitment. Just kind of going back. I mean, we don't have to go through the entire timeline, but, he does get to Colorado over the weekend. Miami sent coaches to go see him on Friday morning. He wasn't at the school. I mean, it just seems like things are trending towards Colorado and the Buffaloes. I mean, I don't know if it's a great sign if, you're kind of just going on a secret visit when the coaches of the school you're committed to are trying to go see you in school. So right now I'm leaning towards Colorado. That's where my crystal ball went on Friday once it kind of, it came out that he was going to Colorado. That's how I feel about it right now. And we'll see what happens. Obviously, this is a recruitment that's taken tons of twists and turns. But I'm not certain that I see him in Miami's class come February 1st.
So how do you evaluate this year's class without Cormani McClain as part of it?
I still think this was a really good class for Mario Cristobal. I mean, they attacked a lot of needs. I mean, in the trenches, right? That's where a lot of this thing starts, especially for him. If you hear him talk about it, Coach Cristobal, I mean, they got 2 bookend tackles, Francis Mauigoa, Samson Akinlola. I mean, those are 2 of the 3 best offensive tackle prospects in the class. I feel like they did a good job along the edge, with Jaden Wayne, Ruben Bain. Those are a couple top 100 talents. Collins Akiampong, Joshua Horton out of Georgia is another big body that they got along the line of scrimmage. I think that's a spot where Miami feels like, they really need to get a lot better at. And I think that they accomplished those goals. Signed 4 linebackers in a room that's really, really thin. I think the defensive backs class is still really good. I mean, Damari Brown out of Plantation American Heritage was a big-time target for them that they were able to land on the early signing day. So that was a huge win for them. Robert Stafford, an Under Armour All-American. So I do think this staff checked a lot of those boxes. Maybe they still want to get, need some help at outside receiver, maybe a little bit more along the interior defensive line. But otherwise, I think they're well on their way to flipping over this roster.
Gabby, I'm going to agree with you there on Damari Brown. I think he's a guy that can maybe plug and play coming from American Heritage. We know that's the defensive back factory. I know you're probably exhausted from the Cormani McClain stuff. I'm personally a little tapped out on it. But I think there's one more big name in play for the Hurricanes when it comes to 2023 recruits. Nicholas Harbor, the freak of all freaks. You texted me that you thought he might be on campus Monday, but it turns out Mom was there. What's kind of the latest with the Hurricanes as they take a swing at one of the best?
Yeah, look, I mean, it seems like, from a public perception standpoint that Miami's kind of on the outside looking in, but I feel like we've kind of seen how this goes before. Mario Cristobal, these guys kind of work in the shadows, and I believe they're they're working on Nicholas Harbor. I mean, I talked to him at the Under Armour All-American check-in, and he said that, yeah, he's hearing from Mario Cristobal. He's hearing from Jason Taylor, Rod Wright. Yeah, he can play on the offensive side of the ball. But I think that Mario Cristobal, these guys are still working on Nicholas Harbor very, very hard. I mean, I wouldn't be totally surprised if he somehow ended up on campus. I don't know what that looks like in terms of, his last official visit weekend going to Oregon. I'm not sure if it's an unofficial thing where maybe they just get him down or whatever the case may be. But it does seem like they're doing what they got to do to get Nicholas Harbor in town. I remember just talking to him at the Under Armour Media Day. He said he has like a medical internship kind of already lined up here in Miami, if that's a direction that he wants to do. So it seems like him and the family have kind of done their homework if Miami is a spot for him. And I do think at this point, it is one of these spots that they are considering. Maybe a long shot, but I don't know, man. I feel like it's kind of risky to rule out Mario Cristobal and these guys in some of these high-profile recruitments down these final stretches.
Yeah, that would certainly soften the blow if they were to lose Cormani McClain. Nicholas Harbor would be a major get. Let's go back to this weekend, though. Miami offensive coordinator Josh Gaddis is technically still employed by the U, but has not been around the team lately. Your colleague David Lake is reporting that a move will be made at offensive coordinator, but either way, Gabby, it's the second year in a row the Canes are without an OC at this very event. So what impact does that have on this crucial recruiting weekend?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Josh Gaddis, again, still employed by the University of Miami, but I don't think he's really been around the program. It seems like Miami sent the wide receiver analyst, David Cooney, out on the road recruiting. So he was out there offering a couple wide receivers in Texas and in St. Louis and whatnot. Yeah, it's obviously not ideal. Miami, again, not only an offensive coordinator, but a quarterback's coach 2 years in a row at this event. But I think Mario Cristobal does carry the load. I mean, he is known as a recruiter. That's kind of what he builds his foundation on as a coach, of course. It's definitely something he takes a lot of pride in. So I think anything that they're lacking maybe in that regard, Coach Cristobal can definitely smooth things over or just kind of take it over. I know that they hosted a transfer wide receiver last weekend, and he felt like he was able to get a good enough grasp of the offense just by talking to Coach Cristobal, because at the end of the day, he runs what he runs on offense. So he definitely has a style. Yeah, it's not ideal, of course, and we'll kind of see what happens with this Josh Gaddis situation, but it's definitely one that we're monitoring down here in South Florida.
All right, speaking of monitoring, I'm checking out the chat right now. People have a lot of questions for you, so I'm going to ask you one. Let's see, this one is, does Miami need to make a big jump on the field in order to recruit in 2024 like they did in the 23 cycle?
I think so. I think they need to show, tangible improvement. Obviously they can't go out there, win 5 games again, and then say, hey, we're still rebuilding the roster, new coaching staff, all those different types of things. They might be young. They might play a couple young guys and all that stuff. And I think that could potentially help them if, let's say, the wins don't look the way it needs to. But I do think we need to start seeing, the things like on Saturdays, it needs to change. I mean, there was some really, really embarrassing losses, inexcusable losses here in 2022. I don't think that, they're going to be able to get away with that the way that maybe they did this time around if that were to repeat. So, yeah, I think Miami definitely needs to start showing those improvements that everyone could look at and be like, okay, look, Miami's definitely trending in the right direction. We can hop on board and kind of, start rolling with these guys.
I love it. Gabby, thank you so much for joining us. With the potential coordinator change we talked about, recruiting news, and of course, Cormani updates, be sure to head to Inside the U for the best reports and analysis. Now it's time for the best viewer questions. That's right. We look at them. Some aren't so good, some are great. So we're going to ask the great ones here because it's our show. We can do what we want. So first one, I'm supposed to ask you from T. Scott Horns. What makes Jarek Gibson such a dynamic talent in 2024? I know you love this guy.
I think I answered that question.
I think you did last time. Tell us again. People want to know. He plays all the positions, right?
Yeah, I think he could be a Power 5 linebacker if he chose to go that route, but he's running back one for us. Yeah. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He went to IMG Academy. He's kind of bounced around high schools, but he carved out a role there, was their go-to option when they needed to run the football. IMG normally races out to a big lead, and then they kind of put in the backups. But with Jarek, I think it's his burst, his vision. I think he can, he's had a pass block a little bit, as crazy as that sounds at the high school level. So we'll see as we get into this 2024 cycle and chew some more meat off the bone. But I think it's going to be hard for someone to overtake him as that first running back, just given what we know from a testing standpoint, what we've seen on film, and what we've seen on the camp circuit. There's a lot to like about Jarek.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot here. If we did have him listed as a linebacker, where do you think he'd rank in that class?
I still think he'd be a top 247 guy. I mean, we see a lot of linebackers that played running back in high school. We see a lot of running backs that also played linebacker. I mean, you got to play on both sides of the ball. We always like to see that from an evaluator standpoint. The NFL data backs that up. I mean, guys that play both ways usually have a ton of success, not only on Saturdays, but Sundays as well.
Yep, we got to diversify. All right, this next question comes from DuckFan2010. I bet you can guess where this one's headed. Do you think NIL will play a role when Nicholas Harbor visits Oregon?
Yeah, I saw this one come through on the messages. I do. Look, I mean, Nicholas Harbor, he's a freak, and he was number one on my list, and I finally got a chance to kind of talk with him at the Under Armour game, and I asked him, what's the freakiest thing you think you can do? And he told me he's got some windmill dunks out there, but he also told me he thinks he could be a professional tennis player if he had to. He could do badminton, so he's a cocky individual, and I think when you talk to him and you listen to him, he's someone that thinks he can legitimately run in the Olympics or run professionally. With that being said, as we got into more of our conversation, he understands that there's a cap in terms of how much you can make as a runner. Yeah, sure, Usain Bolt makes a certain amount, but he's the pinnacle of the sport. There's a lot of other guys that aren't getting those huge contracts. And I do think, I've said from the jump, I think Maryland is in a really, really good spot here. Maryland is tied in with Under Armour. Nicholas Harbor, he's a guy that could be on billboards advertising Under Armour stuff. Now, Nike with Phil Knight and how they're tied into Oregon, you would think that there's going to be those same conversations or those same type of packages or opportunities will be discussed. So absolutely 100%. I think NIL will be a conversation. And if we're being honest, NIL is a conversation really in any recruitment at any level. I mean, you're talking about kids that are going to FCS schools, G5 schools. I mean, that always comes up. So yes, I fully expect NIL to be discussed in some degree with with Nicholas Harbor up there.
Just on the brain. It's just on the brain today. So we're really bragging about our badminton stats nowadays. I mean, this guy is going to be like a surgeon and an Olympian, and he's telling you how good he is at badminton.
And I'll finish this up. I told him, hey, Nick, I think the craziest thing you did is you went 27.9 in the 200-meter dash without starting blocks. And he's like, I'm gonna break that. We have that track meet in a few weeks. He's like, I'm going lower than that in the same event. He's like, I love that track at Texas Tech. So I was like, oh, all right, like we'll wait and see. So anticipate him breaking that number according to him.
I mean, I have no reason to doubt him based on just the few videos I've seen of him running on track. Let's go to our next question here from Hannah Glynn. Going back to when Cooper was on, is there a debate happening over the number one player in 2023? Arch Manning, is there?
There has been some initial conversations, and I know some other services have moved Arch down a few slots in their rankings. I think Arch is going to stay number one for us. What really has been the big debate is that number two position behind Arch Manning. I mean, again, I've said it in the past. A lot of people try to poke holes in what Arch Manning has done, but we love his resume. We love everything about him. So really, it's that number two and number three position. Remember, Dante Moore, he went out to the All-American Bowl, and he was awesome. He was lights out as a quarterback. You have Nico there. Nico is going to play tomorrow night at the Polynesian Bowl on NFL Network. And I actually texted Blair. I'm like, hey, is he going to go? Is Tennessee going to let him play? And Blair said yes. So I think that, at least for me, is kind of must-watch TV. And then the wild card in terms of a guy that could rise is Keon Keeley, the Viking, who's headed to Alabama. He, too, was awesome in San Antonio. So for us, the conversation hasn't been at one. We'll see how it transpires over the next few days. It's really been that number two and number three positions in terms of trying to sort that out.
I like how you've also clarified, too, that although he holds the Manning name, that's not why he's the number one player. This guy is extra special at throwing the football. I'm excited. I'm getting my popcorn ready for tomorrow. Thank you again for filling in this week. Likely the next time you're on the show, it'll be for the 5-star reveal next week, so get ready for that. And be sure to check it out on Thursday. Again, subscribe to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. For Andrew Ivins, I'm Emily Proud, and this is the College Football Recruiting Show.